You're listening to the House Hacking Podcast, the blueprint for one of the best financial life hacks there is. House hacking. If you are looking to get ahead financially or learn about the easiest way to get started with real estate investing, then you are in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of individuals from all walks of life that use house hacking to eliminate their housing costs and accelerating their path to financial independence. Your number one place for all things house hacking.
Mark, man, I know we've been chatting on IG for quite a while. I'm so glad to have you on the show. I mean, how you doing? Where are you calling in from?
Man, I'm feeling good. It's an honor and privilege. From Los Angeles, California, and we have been in contact. I remember when you first created your Instagram, and it was around the same time that I started my brand and Instagram, man. So it's great to be here.
Yeah, yeah. And I had actually been seeing yours. We were sort of in stealth mode, planning and recording episodes before we actually started pushing stuff out on Instagram. So yeah, man, it's awesome to connect. So for folks that don't know Mark Jones, give us this high level summary of your house hacking experience and sort of what you did.
Yeah, man. So I house hack. I kind of stumbled upon it and did it accidentally. In terms of house hacking, it wasn't coined. I guess what is that? 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when I first house hacked, it was coined. I want to live for free. I want to eliminate this huge bill that keeps hitting my personal budget every month. And I was just a young kid, straight out of school, working as a working professional. But again, doing my budget, I'm like, if I could get rid of this line item, I can make progress. I can make headway, and I can open up a world of possibilities. And it just so happened that I had a roommate, or excuse me, not a roommate. I had a neighbor who was moving out. He's a sharp guy, and he and his girlfriend were moving out and getting renting a room in a large house. And he was saying it's a 5 bedroom house. We're gonna cut our expenses in half, or more than that, and we'll still have access to all these amenities. And he said you should think of the same, like how to eliminate your living expense. And I was like, man, I've already been kind of thinking about it, but that'd be cool. So talked to some people, talked to my dad, started researching personal finance and real estate books at Barnes and Nobles. And eventually, I bought a single family residence and rented out the rooms to young guys and gals my age, covered the mortgage PITI. And it didn't seem real at first because I'm like, I'm working, I have a decent job, a good job, but like most of my expenses were low. I had student loans, they're low. My car note was low. Or actually, my car was paid off. I have a car note, groceries. I'm a single guy. It just didn't seem real that this could work. And that opened up the door to real estate, personal finance, changed how I saw things. And I ended up getting the next house hack because I positioned myself with the first one. And that second one is a triplex in Los Angeles, where I'm calling from now.
And that's a pretty cool story that we'll dive into here in a bit. So, well, when did you buy that single family? Was that what, like 2012, 2013, somewhere in there?
No, so it was 2015, I think. The
Okay.
crazy thing is, Andrew, I had the idea and like my dad planted the seed in my mind in 2012, but I didn't listen to him. I'm like, he's like,
We
don't get an
usually don't
apartment.
listen to our parents, right?
He said, don't get an apartment, buy a house. You can get some roommates, if you don't get the roommates, it'll go up in value, whatever. I didn't listen to him. So by 2013, 2014, I started thinking like, man, I didn't take this seriously. How can I get qualified and purchase? But I didn't end up purchasing until 2015 and finally bringing things together. So it was 2015.
So did your dad have experience in real estate, or did this just sort of make sense to him of like, hey, you're a young guy, get a bunch of roommates, it's going to help you get ahead?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, my dad, well, I don't know if you're like I don't know how familiar you are with real estate in terms of like the 80s and in the 70s. The loan lending process, application process, way more lenient. So they had like no doc loans, they had all kind of um simple ways or easy ways to get loans back in the day. So that's not why the only reason why my dad had real estate, but he had some experience in like owning real estate. Again, it was a lot easier to attain real estate back in the day. So he just always used to talk about like rich dad, poor dad, passive income through real estate. And so he showed me, he kind of planted that seed. But again, we just, as a 13-year-old, as a 10-year-old kid, I'm like, okay, passive income. Like, I want to play video games. Like, I don't understand the
What are you
value
talking
of
about,
it.
Dad? Yeah.
Yeah. So he did own some real estate, and we owned our home growing up and things like that. So kind of had some exposure to it.
So he was planting the seeds. It just wasn't
Mhm.
quite bubbling up to the top yet in you, and took a while. So when you bought the home 2015, how old were you at the time, and what were you doing for a career?
So I went to school at Howard University and studied nutrition. So I became a dietitian. So I was working as a dietitian full time. I was 25 years old, finished at 22 school, stumbled around, rented my own place for a while. And then 25, I closed. I hope I'm getting the dates right. I should have like verified this. I don't know if it was 2014 or 2015, but I think it was 2015. So I was 25 at the time. Um, yeah, man, and it was I took me some time to save up the down payment, picked up a couple jobs for like the down payment and closing costs, things like that. But I was just so dead set on it. And that's what it was. The reason it took so long was I couldn't find duplexes in the area in the market. I was looking at the suburban
Uh,
market outside of LA. I couldn't find duplexes and triplexes, and the ones that I could find, they're a little bit out of my down payment money, the range.
yeah.
I didn't save up the money that I needed. So that's why it took me a little bit longer into 2015.
Pre 2012, 2013. I mean, how were your personal finances? I know you're like just out of college, but had the stuff your dad talked about started sinking in where or are you the typical like 21, 22-year old partying, living paycheck to paycheck,
Right.
running up some credit card debt?
Right. You know what? I think I have a knack with money, man. I was the kid that always saved up his birthday money. I used to always they say, Mark, what do you want to be? My aunts would like make a joke out of it. They say, Mark, come in here. We have our friends in. What do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm like, rich. I didn't even say an occupation. I just said, the adjective. You know what I mean? I just wanted to be rich. So I saved a decent amount. I had a girlfriend. We would go out to eat. That was probably my vice, but I didn't like party or spend too much money. I covered all my expenses and saved a little bit, like the 25% of your check or whatever. Just being responsible. But I didn't know anything about financial independence. Retire early
Yeah.
or savings rate of 50, 60, 70% that house hacking allows. It didn't even come to mind. I thought I was being responsible saving, 25% of my income.
Yeah. I mean, and really like the 25%, that's better than, 80, 90% of Americans. So you're already
Mm.
coming out ahead, but then it's crazy. All of a sudden you're like, oh man, is it possible to save 50% or could I save 60% or 70%? Um, cool. So you bought the single family. What did you end up buying it for? How many bedrooms,
Mhm.
bathrooms was it?
Yeah, so it was 169,000, right? So this is in LA County, but this is people are gonna be like, what? 169,000, 2015, the prices were lower going up. But it's in a suburb. It's about like 60, 70 miles outside of Los Angeles. So the
Okay.
prices in LA at that time probably would have been double that at that time.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it was 169. Now numbers a little bit off, but roughly 169. And I read in a book called No Money Down in the 2000s. So I was like studying a lot of real estate and reading books, and it taught how you could ask the seller for the closing costs. And I didn't even know
Yeah.
that was like a possibility. And all I had was money for the down payment. So I had 3.5% down, used FHA for the 169. And then I didn't have any money for the closing costs. So I told my real estate agent, hey, I have family and if I needed to, I could probably lean on them. But like in terms of my own savings, I only had that down payment. And I told him right in there that we need the closing costs paid for by these sellers. And he's like, that'll never work. Like, what do you mean? Like, we can't ask for that. I'm like, you work for me, man. Please just ask. But before I did that, I always do something, and I teach people that now is find out their why, find out the seller's motivation, because their why can become your how. I got some resistance from my agent as well when I was saying, hey, ask them why they're selling. But I read that in the book as well to find out the motivation. And he said they won't tell us why they're selling, but I said please ask them. So they had a child that was like ill. She had like a chronic illness, and she was saving, recently diagnosed, and they were sharing a room with the sister, but they needed more space, and they already found their dream home, and they really wanted to move. So I said leverage. Let's ask them. Paid the closing costs. Mortgage I think was like a little bit less than 1,100. It was a 3 bedroom, 2 bath. I rented 1 bedroom 600, 1 bedroom 500, and so the PITI was totally covered. And then we split
Awesome.
the utilities.
I know this, but folks listening, you're actually a real estate agent now. So
Mm.
do you think that agent was not a good agent? To the fact that in 2015 he didn't know to like try to ask the seller to pay closing costs, or like didn't want to negotiate. And I mean, I've run across agents where they're just like, oh, you want me to negotiate, or I got to ask for something that could be difficult, and you're like, come on. So
Right.
what are your thoughts on that?
Now, I mean, looking at a real estate agent, having some experience, like I have properties and escrow out here in LA now, and we're constantly negotiating. I mean, he had deals underneath his belt. He's a young guy. He had some deals underneath his belt. I just think that he was really used to the traditional and not the, non-traditional. So now he's done flips. I still stay in contact with him. He's like a big flipper and stuff, and has rental property and stuff. So I just think he just didn't have the knowledge, man. He didn't have the exposure, and
He
the
was too
creative,
green at that time. Yeah.
yeah, that creative financing, man. And what that's one of the things I love about real estate is like it's all negotiable. You can get really creative with it. Yes, you have to stay within certain parameters of traditionalism, but yeah, I didn't say half of the closing costs. I didn't say some of the closing costs. I said all the closing costs. So he was just like,
Yeah.
"What are you thinking?" And I was thinking right, so they did it.
Awesome. All right. So, I mean, you're essentially living for free, right? I mean, your two roommates are bringing in $1,100 a month. Real quick, were these friends, or did you like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace? I mean, how are you getting these folks? And did you do leases? And did you know about like Cozy and Avail at that time?
Yeah, so Vel didn't even exist on like our map back then, like Young House Hackers map. Vel is huge now. Like I know Nate Smoyer, he's like the marketing head of marketing guy, and he's always on social media and stuff. But Cozy, I think it was roommates.com is what I used to find people.
That's
Roommates.com.
what I used way back in like
Wait,
2002 was
yeah,
roommates.com. Yeah.
that's the old school stuff. So I use the old school stuff, man. And I wasn't plugged into like bigger pockets like that. I just use Barnes and Nobles. But I always want to shout out this guy, man. He's an OG house hacker. His name is Mike. His name, I don't know if you can get him on the show, that'd be amazing. But he's like off the map. He had a blog, and it was called, I think, Rent by Rooms by Mike. His name was Mike. But he wrote a blog about his whole process, right? About house rules, about leases, about common area rules. And I was just eating up his blog, reading his blog. So I had leases in place, I had security deposit, I had my
You did it the
like
right way.
I did the right, but all because of Mike. It
Yeah.
was this guy, and he was amazing. He ended up paying his mortgage off through roommates, traveled the world, paid for his master's program. So he really showed the possibilities to this young kid who's like reading, could this happen? Could this be possible? So I had leases. I did have a tenant from hell, but what I did was I followed his criteria. So he said set like a minimum credit score, income, do the landlord history. Like he broke it down how to screen them. But I was very lenient on this one. My first, she was my second tenant, my second roommate, because she was an engineer. She made a lot of money and she seemed great on the phone. But I didn't get any landlord history, and she was a terror.
Ah.
Yeah, she was a terror, man. She was always drunk. She was very dirty, loud. And so I did it pretty thoroughly. I don't think that I calculated like my maintenance expenses and like repairs like as much as I would now, because back then I was just my mind was blown that I was making a little bit more than my mortgage every month at 25. So
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
just excited to do that.
Awesome. All right. So then How long were you in that house for? And like, were you at this point like, hey, I'm living for free, life is good, I'm just going to keep going down the path? Or like, were the wheels starting to turn more where it's like, okay, I'm going to start doing more real estate investing? Or were you just sort of like somewhere in between those two?
No, man, I made a mistake, man. I made a big mistake. I started blowing money fast, man. I started blowing
Oh, yeah. I've
so
been there. I've been there.
I made a mistake, man, and now I'm like, I'm strict with my money and stuff like that now. I have like a budget to have fun. But it was like, I have an extra, I went from saving my 25% to saving, 50, 60 percent of my job income. And I was spending it, man. I was going out to eat. I had a girlfriend at the time, and I blew a lot of money, man. I blew a lot of money. And I didn't even think of the future of like the next property, or I mean, I knew that eventually I would have this in my name. I understood appreciation. I grew up in LA, and our house like almost 10x before the 2007 2008 mortgage crisis. So I was always aware of all that, and cognizant. So I knew I was in a good place, but I felt like I have a job now. I'm not paying this rent, mortgage. Let me spend the money. It wasn't until
Yeah.
I think I started being a little bit dissatisfied with the job I got fresh out of school, that I started thinking about my future and kind of like what's the next step and growing. And I started doing some introspection and self assessment. And I started realizing, okay, I need to tighten up with my finances. I want a better job. I want a higher income. I learned Spanish. I traveled the world a little bit. And then when I came back, I was like, okay, you need to get more serious with this. Stop blowing your money. And I started thinking about buying the next property. So
Well, there's this difference between like knowing something, like everyone knows how to lose weight, right? It's you
hmm
move more, you burn more calories, you eat less and you eat healthier, but like actually having the knowledge and applying it, like your dad was having all this stuff sinking in, didn't quite hit, and then all of a sudden it hit, and then you're like, all right, now I can relax a bit, and then you had some fun, and then something else had to change in your life to get you to the point of like, I don't really like this job as much anymore. Like, let me start thinking in. Yeah, it's cool that you sort of had this transition moving through stuff. I went through very similar things, so this is awesome.
that's good to hear because I
So
don't know
then,
much about your house hacking journey, but I know you're a house hacking legend, man. I heard.
oh man, I don't know about legend, but let me tell you. So I don't feel bad. I specifically remember when the month I bought my house at 20, that month after taxes and everything, like my commission check was 12 grand. At at the end of the month, all of it was gone. Like I bought new furniture, just went out to eat, and it wasn't like stupid crazy blowing it. It was just
hmm
like, oh, there's more money coming next month. Let me just spend it. And like
Right.
that whole concept of savings just didn't hit in. And like, we got to go through that sometimes in life. Some people are lucky and fortunate enough to learn it quicker than others. And,
hmm
some people like you and me, it takes us a little while to get it sometimes.
Yeah, and I didn't answer your question. I'm sorry. I stayed there for like 2 years, a little shy of 2 years. So I was like there in 2017, or 2018. So maybe 2.5 years. And what I ended up doing was getting a job, a higher paying job in Los Angeles, like proper where I'm from. And I rented out the master bedroom where I was living. Um, and I was staying with family for a while to save up. And initially, I was going to get an apartment, just a regular apartment, because I didn't think it was possible to afford a house hack in Los Angeles. Until I
Yeah.
came across some real estate investors who taught me otherwise. Um, so yeah, networking is very important.
And I think a lot of those, you get to that point where someone's like, hey, let me just show you something a little different. So, I mean, who did you come across and what was that knowledge that they told you that made you think differently?
You know what? It's funny because now she's a business partner of mine, but her name is Lauren. And what happened was I started thinking about, okay, what's the next play? Can I do more house hacks? Can I buy rental properties and rent by the room? Because that was pretty lucrative. And where I was living is in a city called Lancaster, Palmdale. There are Air Force bases, a lot of engineers, young people that don't mind renting out rooms, saving money. They're making six figures, working for the government, Air Force base. So what I did was I got a HELOC off of the equity from the property, went up in value before I moved out. because you get better LTV, loan to value ratios when you're a primary resident. And
Well,
then I was
can we
gonna.
just stop you right there?
Oh, sorry.
Say that again, though. I mean, it's natural to you, but like you just dropped this golden nugget. Get the
Yeah,
HELOC
sorry,
before you
sorry,
move out. Can you just expand on that? I mean,
sorry.
it just golden nugget
Yeah,
$1 million
right,
thing just rolled right out your
right.
tongue
Yeah,
on the
well,
table and on the floor. So yeah,
so
and
that's
it's common knowledge to you. So I just want to call that out. Explain that to folks.
and I think that's why our platforms are so important, man. Because like for what comes after like years of uploading knowledge, it just seems so easy when it downloads and falls out. So basically, the equity in a property is the difference between like the current mortgage or loan and the market value, right? The appraised value. So what you can do is you can get a home equity line of credit and link. It's a line of credit based on the equity within your property. But because it's seen as a lower risk if somebody is primary resident, they're less likely to just default on the mortgage because it's not like they're an investor and they're out of state or an investor that don't live there. They will let you leverage more of that equity and give you a higher loan to value ratio. So that just means you could get 80% loan to value, 80% of that equity amount that they would usually give you is better than say getting 60% or 65% or 90%. You know, nowadays, I don't know if they're giving 90, but you can get 90 versus a 60 or 70, 80 versus 70 or 65. So you always want to get the
Yeah.
HELOC beforehand. And the reason is, he said before you move out, because you can still move out and still have the HELOC at the same rates. It's subject to change. It can change, but it's like a credit line. You could just use it repeatedly.
Yeah, I mean, get it done before you move out, so you're
Hmm.
getting that primary residence LTV and rate. Yeah,
Oh, I
awesome.
didn't even say the interest rate, and the rate
So
is lower too. Yep, sorry.
yeah, so they said, hey, here's a way to tap that equity that you built up to go buy the next property. So did you have to use any other cash to buy this triplex, or could you?
No, so
Was the
sorry.
equity line enough?
So sorry. So no, that's not actually what happened. So just off of my own research, I said, okay, I hadn't met Lauren yet. I said, I want to get the HELOC. I'll get it before I move out. And then I was going to use the money from that to buy, I got like 45 or 50,000. And I was going to use that money to put 20% down on some $100,000 homes that were like even further up, closer to the bases. And then you could get like a 4 bedroom or almost, or maybe even 5 bedroom for that price. So I was calling a broker, but she was the secretary for the broker. So I was on the phone with the broker and I told them my plans, and they're like, yeah, we'll set you up. We can help you purchase those properties. And I was kind of venting to her and I said, man, what I really want to do is house hack. I want to buy a 4 unit or triplex in Los Angeles, but I know it's impossible. It's too expensive. The numbers just won't work. Um, and she said, well, actually, you sound really young. Actually, I have two 4 units in Los Angeles. And I said, what? You have two 4 units? You sound like my age. You sound like you're like what? Like 27. I told you to 2017. And she's like, yeah, I am. I am 27. I have 8 units in Los Angeles. I'm like mind blown. So I asked her if we could talk offline a little bit more, and we started talking, and she explained everything to me and certain neighborhoods that I wasn't looking in, that had a better like cap rates, better returns and stuff like that in Los Angeles. And the conclusion was though that I had to sell the first property to cash out enough to get the next property. So I never used the HELOC. I just ended up cashing out.
Okay, awesome. So you ended up selling, and did you do a 1031 exchange, or did you just pay taxes, or because you lived there, it was tax free?
God bless America, man. God bless America. So you're familiar, if you live there for the last 2 or 5 years, no capital gains tax, consult your CPA, but no capital gains tax, up to 250,000 for individuals and 500,000 for couples. That I found out though, that's only with primary residence and single families. With multifamilies, you do have to pay a portion of the capital gains tax, like proportionate to your living or primary residence area. So if you're living in a triplex or 4 unit, you'll have to pay some taxes. But anyway, so I didn't have to pay taxes on it. Just got the check, and it put me in the range to afford that multifamily in Los Angeles.
Awesome. So you had this insider that helped you look in the right areas, and you found the triplex. I mean, how long did you spend looking before you found the triplex, or was this sort of pretty quick?
Nah, man, it was a forever thing. I sold the property I think in 2018, the middle of 2018, and I didn't find the property until the middle of 2019. But the thing was is that I'm from like a nicer part of Los Angeles. I'm from an area called West Mid City, and it's like close to like Beverly Hills, West Hollywood, like nicer areas. So I was only looking in like neighborhoods close to that, and I couldn't afford those areas, right? Or if I could afford
Yeah.
it, I would get outbid, cash offers. Everyone wants to live in these areas. So she taught me of some more up and coming areas that I wasn't familiar with. Um, but because I wasn't familiar with it, it took me a little bit longer to find the deal. And also, I discovered this amazing program, which is called the NACA program, NACA. And what I was going to go FHA, but what I found out was with this program, you could do no down payment, no closing costs. And so I had this check. The property had gone up in value 85,000, cashed out, no capital gains tax. Had this check, and I'm like, okay, my net worth just shot up after a couple of years. I can use this for the down payment and closing costs, or I could pocket it and go through this NACA program. So I went through that program, but it takes forever to go through the program. When I say
Mm.
forever, it's like an additional 6 months. Whereas with FHA, my clients go in 30, 60 days. You're good to go. So because of that, it took that additional 6 months.
And the reason for the 6 months, they put you through some like home buyer training, personal finance training, and
Mhm.
and that sort of things that you have to do. Yeah.
It's required. They make you vote. They want to know if you have a Venmo that's not sourced, that's over $100. They have a qualm with it. They have an issue that has to be sourced. You have to write a letter for everything. So fine tooth comb.
Yeah. So, I mean, but if you can use the program, it's a great way to do it, to jump through those hoops, to have that, no money down. So, I mean, you were smart, and I'm hoping you were smart. You didn't go out and blow the 75 grand. What'd you do with it?
Nah, man. I used some of it to pay off some debt, so like student loan debt. I had a scholarship at Howard, but I still had some loans. I renovated. I used some of the HELOC, not the HELOC. I used credit cards. I used something that was like debt that I had to pay off with the money with the proceeds. I think it was a HELOC, and then after I cashed out, like some of that was used to pay it off because I renovated the property, like kitchens and bathrooms, before selling it in order to raise the value. So paid off some debts, pocketed it, invested in the stocks. I started learning more about like index funds, and you asked me about the personal finance stuff in a bit, but I learned about index funds, so I invested it. Yeah, didn't blow it. Smarter this time.
Awesome. I mean, paying down debt and invest in smart decisions. So, I
Hmm.
mean, what I want to get into the triplex here in a second, but one
Hmm.
little segue. Why did you decide to invest outside of real estate? I mean, because some
Hmm.
folks, they get in this mindset of like, I'm 100% in real
Hmm.
estate or 95% in real estate. What made you say, hey, I want to put money in equities, index funds versus dump everything left into more real estate deals?
Well, I kind of did both, to be honest with you. So like, I my unit is like really nice. My interior unit. So I spent money like renovating the kitchen. Everything is like customized in the bathroom. I fixed up some of the unit, the interiors of the other like tenants, painted the exterior to get that equity boost. So I understand the value of real estate. Like my property's gone up in value like over two. I always talk about on my Instagram, like over 200,000 um in less than 2 years and 18 months. So got a great return in real estate, but just understanding how like 100% passive index funds are, just the value of riding that wave of the stock market. I want to have some money in play. Also putting it in
Yeah.
a taxable brokerage account, you can still cash out and invest in real estate. So I honestly do plan on cashing out some of it. That's not in the retirement, like locked in the retirement accounts, to cash out some of it and then invest in real estate. But this last year, we've seen incredible gains, especially if you did dollar cost averaging during like the pandemic. So those returns, if
Yeah.
they were just, in the stock market or in a savings account, or maybe, in the bricks and real estate, maybe I wouldn't have gotten the same return. But I think I did like 30%, 70 into real estate and savings, and then 30% into the stock market.
I mean, I love real estate and it's amazing, but it does
Hmm.
take some work
Hmm.
where, the money in my brokerage account, I check it maybe once a quarter to do a little rebalancing and I know it'll be there for me in 20 or 30 years. So other than that, sort of once a quarter. So yeah, that's awesome that, you have this mindset of like, hey, I'm a real estate guy, but I'm also going to start to do some investing elsewhere. So, all right, triplex, you just alluded to it, up 200 grand in 18
Hmm.
months. So you bought it. What'd you end up buying it for? It
Hmm.
was a triplex. How many bedrooms and bathroom in each of the units?
Yeah, so I bought it in a city called Inglewood. So historically, Inglewood was like a nice neighborhood if you go all the way back. But um, like when I was growing up, it had like gang issues, violence, crime, and that's like drastically like reduced in the last, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And we also have a new stadium here where the Olympics is going to be held. Um, it's going to be held here. New Clipper Stadium, just so much like growth, new metros. And I know all this because
Yeah.
I'm a native, right? So it's in the line of gentrification, the line of development. But at the same time, it's not like the hot areas where I grew up, where like you can visibly see it. Like you walk out, there's a coffee shop, they're doing yoga, they're doing Pilates. I want to live here. So the yuppies and kind of young professionals that are moving in, they don't really know it. So I bought it at 640, which my LA friends who have like $1 million 4 units that they bought and things like that, they're like, "What? You bought a triplex in LA for 640 in 2019?" So yeah, I did that, and I had like a 2% interest rate. This was before it dropped like incredibly, because another benefit of the NACA program, they have a really low below market interest rate, even lower than FHA, and they allow you to buy down the interest rates, buy down the points, and you could even have. And I love negotiation, man. So everything's up for negotiation. So I negotiated about $20,000 from the seller to go towards buying down the interest rate. And he was always, so every time there was an issue and I went to negotiate, I said, "Oh, that's more money towards the interest rate." And the listing agent is like, "Why does he keep saying, like, I'll give him repair credits, I'll give him this, I'll give him that. Why does he keep talking about the interest rate?" I'm like, he doesn't know I want to live free out here in Los Angeles and get that rate as low as possible so that the rent from those tenants can cover the mortgage. But to answer your question, it's seven bedrooms in total. It's a 3 bedroom property, like a 3 bedroom house on the lot, which is really cool. It has like a porch, fruit trees, backyard, and then there's a duplex that has 3 bedrooms as well on one unit, and then my unit has 1 bedroom. It's just like a bachelor pad, laundry hookup, and all of them. So I was able to get a good mix where I can command pretty good rents from both of the units.
So, and what's your payment now with the NACA program? PITI, and then what are you grossing on rents from the other two units you're renting?
So it's at 3 grand, approximately 3 grand. And the tenants are just above that. The reason why and my LA guys, they just don't they really don't believe it. I have some friends that do asset management, things like that. They're like, "What are the numbers on that?" Um, to be honest, when I really think about it, if we weren't in the pandemic and I was able to raise the rents like appropriately, or if I did turnover, um, I would be cash flowing because the rents are below market actually. Like 3 bedroom in LA, and you have 2 3 bedrooms and you're just over 3,000. That's like really low in LA, but it's enough to cover the PITI.
I know, but still, like if you're in a $700,000-800,000 property, and all you got to worry about is maintenance costs and putting money aside for capex, and the mortgage and taxes and insurance are covered by the tenants. I mean, that's a win. I mean, what would it cost you to live in a bachelor pad in LA? Way more than that maintenance and capex would be.
And I think people that don't, I mean, they understand house hacking, but don't really understand to the level that we do. They kind of forget about that, all those benefits, because it's the rent savings, the appreciation, the tax benefits. the depreciation benefits with real estate. So it's a win, man. And I'm bullish on LA. I'm from here. I've seen what it's done. It's only going up from here. So I just had to get locked in. And this has allowed me to do more and move forward. So
One of the interesting things, I mean, like if you needed cash for closing, I could see like wanting to take the seller concessions, but it's this interesting idea, right? It's like, should I take $5,000 in seller concessions or should I use that to buy down the rate? If you're going to own the property for 20 or 30 years, you know, buying down the interest is probably going to be worth a multiple of that $5,000 that you would have gotten in credit. And I mean, obviously a dollar today is worth more than a dollar tomorrow, but I mean, you could almost get, you'd have to do the math, but I wonder if it's like a 3 to 10 times of like, hey, I'm going to take a 10 grand in concession to buy down the rate with the NACA program that's way below, you know, and over the next 30 years, that's going to be worth 3, 4, 5 times what I would have gotten from the seller concession. So it's a pretty cool approach. And especially if you're, you know, those small, you know, if you're buying $100,000 property, a quarter point doesn't make a big difference. You know, when you've got a $600,000 loan, it really starts to add up pretty quick.
Yeah, man. And I think going into it, that was my thought pattern. Like, okay, let me run these numbers. What's the sweet spot? And I can raise rents. I had to keep telling myself, okay, wait, I can raise rents. I can raise rents. And within 3 years, the rents will look totally different. Within 2 years, it looks different. So just keep that in mind, forefront of your mind.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the things you mentioned about not wanting to sort of raise rents right now, sometimes I definitely think it's better to keep a decent tenant when there's challenges going on, you know, in the economic environment. And you got COVID, you got eviction moratoriums. Like, why rock the boat and end up, you know, turnovers cost money, right? I mean,
big time.
Even if you can turn it over really quick, like they move out on Monday and you start marketing it, most tenants can't move in the next day. They'll sign the lease and pay a deposit, but, you know, they want a week to 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And then even if the unit's in perfect condition, you end up having to like clean it yourself, pay a cleaner, a little bit of touch up. You know, it's hard to do a turnover, not spend $500. I mean, changing the locks and cleaning and, you know, new set of blinds. The next thing you know, you're at $500 easy. And when you sort of look at it, like, should I try to push rents and cause a potential challenge and then have to deal with all the turnover costs, which can end up being a couple grand when you look at vacancy loss and marketing. Yeah. So it's a cool approach that I think you're taking.
Yeah, man. I love how you think, man, because I made that mistake and I didn't do this as well. I know I mentioned the moratorium. I don't want to sound like a horrible guy. So I want to clarify. You know, landlords still had expenses, and at first we didn't get mortgage relief or any help at first. They were just, especially in California, it's like renter centered. So they were trying to cancel rent. They weren't even thinking about landlords. But I'm not saying that, you know, I want to just raise rent through the pandemic, but I'm just saying, you know, it slowed down because of the pandemic. But you made a good point because in my first house hack, I lost a really, 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 really good roommate, man. He used to like manage the other roommates, basically. He used to make sure the plumber would get in, he would fix the toilets if there was issues. He was like incredible. He would make sure everybody cleaned up and did their part. And I raised it like $50. And he's like, hey man, like, you know, I really don't think you should raise it. And he kind of gave a little pushback. But I was like, what is he gonna do? Move out? And he moved out. He left. He moved in with his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And so I learned, I said, man, I calculated how much it would be for the year. I'm like, it wasn't worth losing this guy. Like, he was a prime time, you know, tenant. And so I learned that lesson, man. Turnovers is expensive, man.
100%. So, I mean, we sometimes, and this is what I don't like. There's a lot of things I don't like about the real estate community. It's to be successful, you only have to have these giant deals and like, you know, 0 to 100 units in 10 days type of thing, right? Like, if you can do a house hack and you can break even, dude, that's killing it, man. You just eliminated your biggest item in your budget. Like, if 10 deals is all you need to make happy, don't try to push for 100 or 1,000 because that's what other people are doing. And there's this thing of like, we got to max rent. I got to get the max rent. And it's like, no, sometimes you don't want the max rent. And sometimes it makes sense to like, if the range is, you know, 1,400 to 1,600, like go at 1,450, get tons of people applying so you have more people to choose from and get a killer tenant. And then that turnover cost vacancy kills our profit, right?
Sure.
I mean, 1 month of rent loss to make that up, like, oh, I tried to push rents for $50, and you're like, well, that would have been $600 a year, and I lost a great tenant that helped me manage. And like, so yeah, there's this balance of we don't want to be greedy, or doesn't always make sense to push rents, because sometimes it's better to keep an amazing tenant, and you can still do rent increases a little bit, but yeah, it's don't always strive for that, like maxing out rent.
Yeah, you're speaking from a place of wisdom, Andrew. I can tell you have that experience because I try and communicate this idea to people because they hear gurus and they hear different people that have 100 units, 35 units, and you really want to just kind of come back down to earth and realize, okay, financial freedom is defined as when my passive income or income from my investments, cash flow from my investments, cover 100% of my monthly expenses. So if you buy one house hack and it covers 30% of your monthly expenses or more, or 25%, whatever the number is, you're 25 or 30% towards that 100% goal. How many rental properties would you have to purchase to cover your entire mortgage, cover your entire rental?
That $100-$200 a door is going to take a while to add up to it.
It's going
to
take a while versus one house hack. And then you have legends and people like Craig Kirlop, or even myself getting multiple house hacks, or my friend Lauren and business partner Lauren, who house hacked 3 times with multiple 4 units here in LA. And now we go from eliminating the housing expense to having almost 2,000 in revenue a month. Now it's 3,000 revenue a month, right? Cash flowing. So just think of it that way. You're producing a lot of cash flow, and you can't see it because it's eliminating the rental expense. It's still there though.
Yeah. Well, one thing there's a couple of things I want to touch on, but one is, let's talk about your quality of life. I mean, you hinted at it a little bit earlier of like, hey, I've got, the nice kitchen, the nice bathroom. So, I mean, I think if you buy on the fringes, and, buying the path of progress, that's where you can get the most upside. But one of the things that's happened in the house hacking community a lot is like house hacking is a huge sacrifice on quality of life. I mean, do you feel like you had to take a step down in where you're living and the amenities that you have, or do you feel like, yes, I am, but it's okay of a short-term gain? I'm like, what are your thoughts on it, and sort of how are you feeling about that?
I think the best approach is always like short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. When I bought the house hack in the suburbs, I had a girlfriend. I don't want to get into it, but I was trying to purchase with her, and she didn't see the vision of, she was almost a fiance, but she didn't see the vision of purchasing, in the outskirts and then being able to have property, in LA. Because like I said, where I'm from, it's like prime time. It's nice. So she was like, "You're from here? You want to live somewhere else? Like, what's wrong with you? We should live here." But I will say
sounds like a good story over a beer one time, where we can go into more details.
We have to go into it, but about the amenities where I am, it's true. It's not. Man, I was prime time where I grew up. Like my family still has property in West Mid City, and so the bars. There's some nightlife in bars, but it's not the same. Whole Foods being like in jogging distance, things like that. It's not there. But when you look at, in 18 months, how much the equity has grown, when I look at, how I'm able to save thousands a month, like because of my job and my living expenses being so low, my car being paid off, I told you paid off debts. So, I tell people I'm saving $2,800 a month, or I'm telling people I'm $2,600 a month. And they're like, what? Like, what is going on? So when I think of it like that, I'm like, okay, I'm okay with sacrificing temporarily for the amenities. And I'll be honest, my house is a little bit closer to like downtown via like freeways. And I've discovered new neighborhoods, right? I discovered new neighborhoods. I go a little bit to El Segundo. It's like Manhattan Beach is the southern beach cities. And I'm used to the northern beach cities because of where I grew up. So I'm exploring those. I'm exploring downtown a little bit more because I was more on the west side, and downtown is eastern, a little deeper inland in LA. So yeah, it's a sacrifice, man. It's a sacrifice, but nothing is easy. I mean, you have to make the sacrifices. So
awesome. So, I mean, we've covered a lot here. Where are you at now? I mean, you obviously are more in real estate as a real estate agent. I mean, so fill us in before we close. I mean, where are you at right now, and what's coming up in your future?
Man, I have a lot going on. I know you said I'm a real estate agent. I got my real estate license, I think in like 2018 when I was looking for the property. But I was just using it for myself, for my own edification, my own education, and just to apply to buy a property, finance, and buy a property. But what I did was I started a brand, man, online brand, Livin Rent Free, which you're familiar with. It's living with no G, rent free. And I started like proselytizing, started teaching people about, these benefits about the HELOC and 2 to 4 unit property, the NACA program, and how you can eliminate your largest expense and get closer to financial independence. So I've helped a lot of people, buy properties through that brand and business, and release courses, as you saw, teaching people how to do it step by step. And then I started practicing actively as a real estate agent in Los Angeles to help people, purchase house hacks. So I'm in escrow right now on my our first deal. The young guy, he listens to your podcast actually, man. He's an avid listener of your podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah. So hopefully, fingers crossed, wish us success. We'll close on that. Um, and lastly, now I'm raising money to syndicate an apartment building this year with my partner, who owns like 15 units. She has some ground up development experience. She's the same young woman who was that secretary on the phone and told me that she owned 8 units,
Awesome.
and we stayed in contact. And she said, "Hey, you have this brand. I have this money. I have experience. You have experience. Let's syndicate an apartment building in Iowa, in Illinois, in Middle America, and raise money." And so we have commitments from investors that I've met through the Livin Rent Free page. And it's funny because they're all focused on real estate. So they all are flippers. They own their house hacks. They invest out of state, and they're like, "Hey, we want to give you 50,000, or I'm up for 30,000 to buy that $1 million apartment building." So that's where I am now, man, and trying to get more people to
Awesome.
house hack, man.
So, I mean, looking back, where'd you mess up where you'd be like, and let me slap my 23-year-old self in the face and be like, "Hey, don't make this mistake that's coming up in the next year." I mean, if you could go back, what would you change and do differently?
There's so many layers to my story. There's one brief story I didn't tell. My first day at an all staff orientation, there was a woman who walked up to me. She was a doctor from Myanmar, but she was practicing as a dietitian here in the States. She walked up to me and said, "Are you married?" And I said, "I'm 22 years old. Why is she asking me if I'm married?" So she's an older lady. And I'm like, "No, I'm not married." She said, "You should buy a house, single family or a multifamily house, get roommates, have them cover the mortgage, and after a few years, sell it." That was the first thing she said to me. It's my first week. I said, "What is this woman talking about?"
Sounds like what your dad was saying.
Yeah. So I'm like, "Man, these people are crazy. Why are these old people keep telling me to invest in real estate?" So what I would tell myself
Yeah.
is to believe in yourself, have faith in your vision, and execute earlier. So I didn't think I was ready at 22. I didn't think I was ready at 23, but I was ready. And now with the syndication of apartment buildings, I'm just jumping and going for it because you want to execute earlier, and have faith in yourself.
Awesome. What do you think was one of the best things that you did over this sort of 6-7 year period?
Buy in that tertiary Inglewood market. Well, I guess it's a combo of keep pushing, trying to invest, and meeting Lauren, and who put the bug in my ear. But the real thing was buying in this tertiary market in Inglewood, because you make money on the buy, not on the sell. And so
Yeah.
I bought in an area that was just poised for so much growth, whereas I was looking at areas that have gone up, 50, 60, 75,000 because they were already kind of prime time. And if I had purchased in those areas, I wouldn't have seen the equity and the wealth that I've seen since I invested in a short period. So that was the best decision I made.
Awesome, man. It has been so cool chatting with you this evening. I mean, we've only had the little short messages back and forth on IG, but before we let you go, we like to ask all of our guests a set of final 6 questions. Are you ready for them?
Yes, let's go.
All right. So question number 1, what is your favorite personal finance resource? So blog, book, podcast, as long as it's personal finance related.
Hands down, one of the top if not the top personal finance book ever written by the CEO of Bigger Pockets, Set for Life by Scott Trench. Amazing book.
Oh, best personal finance book ever. I mean, that's weight. So if
It's
you haven't read it, it's good.
it's top
What?
two. It's top two.
All right. So question number 2, what's your favorite real estate related resource? So blog, book, podcast in the real estate world.
Right now, I love this guy called Invest with Ace. He's on TikTok and Instagram. He talks about everything like raising money, buying out of state, house hacking, but he does really good TikToks and he explains it like very clearly. So Invest with Ace.
We'll put his info in the show notes for folks. That way you can find his TikTok and everything, and we'll have those links on there. All right. So question number 3, what's been your favorite travel destination so far?
Oh man, cool question. I wasn't expecting that. Once I was in the Himalayas and I studied Hindi at an 100-year-old language school. And those views in the
Ooh,
mornings, the sunset, the sunrise, monkeys running around, the birds that I saw, amazing. The Himalayas in India.
awesome. All right. So what's next on your travel vacation list? And I'll let you give me 2 answers here. So like, what's coming up working with COVID? And then like, what's the big one once the world's a little more normal after, COVID's died down?
Man, COVID is put a wrench on our travel plans. I'll probably go to the Bay Area. I used to go to like Oakland a lot when I was younger in my 20s. That's where that house hacking money was going. I was spending it and going to Oakland and stuff. So there, and I would say Carnival in Brazil, but specifically in Bahia, Salvador, Bahia. And the reason is that in other cities you have to watch the floats and watch people dance, but they still do it old school, like in the 1800s, and everybody can dance in the street and you can get on the floats. So in Salvador, Bahia,
Ooh,
Carnival.
awesome. Yeah. So I've always had this one of like, speaking of carnivals, like go to some of the great carnivals around the world. Like obviously in New Orleans,
Nice.
our carnival we call Mardi Gras. In Haiti, when I did aid work there, they had what was called Rah Rah, which is
Mhm.
essentially in the carnival season. I mean, obviously Brazil is like
Man.
Carnival, but then Venice is this like super higher end, fancy, prim and proper, but still party. I think that would be another cool carnival
I didn't know there was one
experience
in
to go
Venice.
to. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So if you make that one happen, you'll have to let me know how it is. But that sounds like a really cool travel list item.
Will do, man.
All right. So question number 5, what is your biggest bucket list item that you have not accomplished yet?
I got to see the pyramids of Giza, man. I got to see the pyramids of Giza.
Ooh,
Yeah. I don't know if you've been, but that's like, if I could do it in this lifetime,
we
I got
did
to
a
do
big
it.
Middle East trip.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. We went, what was this? I think it was 2019. Yeah. So my
Oh,
wife and I
lucky.
went with two friends, and yeah, we did Qatar, Egypt, Jordan. Then I had to come back, and my wife and her girlfriends went on to Abu Dhabi and Dubai. But
Amazing.
and pyramids were cool. And then, I mean, you're at the right age. Did you watch Indiana Jones growing up at all?
A little bit. Yeah. I watched them a little bit.
Yeah, ever since I watched Indiana Jones, where they went through like the Last Crusade, it's they filmed it in Petra, Jordan. Like I've always wanted to go, so we were able to knock that one off the list. But
Petra's amazing
yeah,
too, man. Petra's amazing.
yeah, yeah. All right, so 6th and final question: what is your favorite life hack?
I'll say digital assets. It's one I've recently discovered, but digital assets are amazing because they have very little marginal costs, if any marginal costs. And a digital asset could be like a course, it could be a brand, YouTube page, and you create it once, and it just keeps going and paying you into ad infinitum into perpetuity. So having a digital asset, um, it's transformed my life. I told you I'm going to be syndicating deals and meeting clients. So
Yeah.
digital asset is one of the greatest in our time. Everyone should have a digital asset or digital real estate.
Well, I mean, just a couple episodes ago, we had Chance on that
Oh, the
sold the
legend.
Facebook group he started. That was all about like quotes and stuff. And I can't remember, it was like 15 or 18 grand he sold it for. And it was like, yeah, it was this little thing. I just started doing like motivational quotes and stuff and resharing other people's content. And then I sold it and used that for the down payment. I was like, So awesome.
Man,
So awesome.
so
But yeah, that's an awesome life hack.
I
Make digital assets.
man, I gotta say thank you to your podcast because I met him. We're like buddies now because of your podcast. I saw him on there and I related to him because I had the brand and I had the page and the courses and stuff. And I'm like, that's so cool. And I actually used to follow his Facebook page. I used to follow it and I was
Oh,
inspired
you
by it.
did? That's cool.
Yeah, so he connected me with the course that teaches you how to like syndicate deals. So that he took to be able to buy that 24 unit. So yeah, he's my buddy, man. So I appreciate you.
Awesome. That's really cool. I'm glad y'all can get connected. I mean, that's what this show's for, right? Is to help people learn and bridge those connections. Mark, man, it's been so awesome having you on. Where is the best place for people to find you if they want to learn more about you?
Go to my Instagram, Livin rent free, living rent free, no G. And I'll be there. Slide into my DMs, check out some of my content. I go live, ask me questions going live. Yeah, or just meet me in LA, man. You may see me at the beach or a nice restaurant. Just wave at me if you see me.
Hey, if you're trying to buy a property in LA, now you know a good
Oh,
realtor, Mark here, be able to
oh,
help you out. So
you know what? I didn't even advertise that.
we'll put Mark's.
I didn't even advertise
I'm gonna
that.
throw it out there for you. I was gonna say we'll put all of Mark's stuff in the show notes for folks. That way, if you forget it and you want to look them up, we'll have it all in there for everyone.
So sorry, man. LA native plus investor friendly real estate agent. If you're looking to house hack in Los Angeles or the greater Los Angeles area, I'm your guy. We'll run the numbers, make sure it covers the majority of mortgage, if not total, mortgage expense, PITI. And my information will be in the show notes. So thank you so much, Andrew. I forgot about that.
Yeah, no problem, man. It's been awesome having you on. Thank you again for the time. I appreciate it.
Man, enjoy your night.